Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation, the number one show for business leaders and entrepreneurs who want to make a greater impact in the world. Tune in every week on Tuesday as I interview live different guests, world changers, difference makers in the area of business, leadership, mindset, societal transformation. And today we're going to talk about relationships, the relationship you have with yourself and also with others. So I'm really excited that you're here. If you're watching us live, tell us where you're from. Tell us the city, the state, the country that you're watching from. And also, we're going to talk about relationships and connecting with yourself and others. What's one thing that you would like to get from this conversation? And we'll make sure that we honor that expectation and be able to deliver what it is that you're looking for. So you can post that in the chat. I'm your host, Nicole Jansen. And as I said, you can join me live every Tuesday as I interview difference makers and world changers. This show is actually brought to you by my coaching and training company. And it's kind of funny because I've been doing this show for almost 6 years now. And it's so funny because people will ask me and say, so Nicole, I know you podcast and everything. What exactly do you do as a business? And so clearly I haven't been explicit enough in that. So let me just tell you that I do coach leaders and entrepreneurs to help them to grow their business, to be able to make a greater impact in the world. And so if you are a leader or aspiring leader and you're looking to take your business or your impact to the next level, then I encourage you to go to leadersoftransformation.com/coaching. And you can find out a little bit more about the coaching that I offer. And you can schedule a free consult with me if it's something that you want to discuss and explore working together. Okay, so that's leadersoftransformation.com/coaching. Our topic, like I said, today is connecting with yourself and others. And our guest is Maria Fudas, and she is a certified assertiveness and transformational coach and the author of the book, Connect with Yourself and Others. See, I'm so creative. I came up with this unique title. Not really. It's the title of her book, and it is an excellent, excellent book, and I've read it actually a while back and made a lot of notes, earmarks, and so forth for this conversation. And we're going to explore how to develop a higher sense of awareness and assertiveness in your communication so that you can connect on a deeper level with yourself and others. Maria is actually the youngest of 7 children, and she is born into a long line of intuitive and spiritual healers. She teaches a different way of thinking and communicating, and using her techniques, one is able to transform their life and effectively control their thoughts, emotions, and hence one's reality. This allows for more confidence, stronger connections, and the ability to attract better relationships. So, Maria, welcome. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you, Nicole. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And a shout out before we go any further to my good friend and yours, Frankie Anastasiadis, which is just fun to say. I love Frank. I've known him probably for about 20 years now, I think. And when he came and said, hey, I think Maria would be a great guest for your show, I was all ears. So I love Frank, and I'm glad that he connected us here.
Hi, Frankie.
Yeah. Hey, I hope you're watching. If you're not watching, you should be. So anyway, because we're talking about you and it's all good. So let's dive in and let's talk about, so I just mentioned that you grew up in a household with 7, you being the youngest of 7 children. How did that influence the work that you do today? Because I think about what it might have been like to be the youngest and having 6, I had one older sibling, right? And no younger siblings. I'm the youngest. And I know what that was like. I can just imagine having 6 older siblings and what the communication was like. So tell us a little bit more about that experience.
Yeah, having a big family is great in a lot of ways because you have a lot of people that you could relate to. If you fight with one person, you have another person to talk to. So it's great and all that. And I mean, the events are huge, like Christmas, Easter. They're huge events with lots of people. As you can imagine, they're married, and then you have their kids, and then now they have grandkids. So it's really extended. But growing up, I mean, it does have its challenges because, as you know, everybody has their own personality. So I was the youngest, so in a way, maybe I had it a little bit easier for my parents. That's what my sisters say, anyways. So, but growing up with a big family is good because you have a diverse, diverse people, diverse personalities. But it's also challenging because being the youngest and coming from a Greek background, immigrant parents, they were very strict. So they had the old school mentality, and then I had my older brothers, which were also kind of old school mentality. So I had like a lot of fathers up above me. But that shaped me to be, the person that I am with good morals and good way of thinking and being able to relate, to learn to navigate and to relate with a lot of people. So it's all good at the end. Yeah.
So my brother was really a strong personality. You talk about having a lot of fathers. So he literally said to me, and I love him, we get along really well. Back then we did not so much. But one of the reasons why is because he used to say to me, when dad's not here, I'm the father. And he was like 3.5 years older than me. So I might have been 6 and he was 9 or 10 years old. And I used to think, who died and made you God? And so it was quite the experience. But as I said, now we have a great relationship. I see the responsibility. I see some of the things and he actually taught me so much. Even just growing up with him being such a strong personality, it actually led me to at first so we're talking about assertiveness and we're talking about communication and building better relationships and so forth. So it was like initially it made me quieter because my dad talked a lot and my brother talked a lot, and literally there was no word that I could get in edgewise.
Yeah.
And so I just was really quiet. And then but after a while I started to get tired of that. And so I remember this one moment, I think I was about 6 and I was in my kitchen and I had my, like, everybody's bossing me around, and I was like, when do I get to be right? When do I get to speak up? And that was, so it started to bring out in me some of that personality that was there, but it had been a little bit more dormant. So can you talk a little bit more as we're kind of getting into this, and I'm
Sure.
sharing a little bit my own personal story, and I'm sure you have lots of stories as well, is to like, how does that dynamic work? Maybe talk about this idea, and maybe even starting off with awareness, because I know awareness, obviously being aware of what's going on is really important.
Yeah, so going back to my experience as well, and then we'll speak a little bit about awareness as well. But my experience, also behaviors, as you know, are formed by your experiences, your behaviors, and the way you act and react. So I know that I'm pretty loud. I know a lot of. I always used to be shushed by my ex-husband, by my siblings, people that know me. My voice really carries, and it has its benefits. But growing up, I was always shushed. And I recognized, being the youngest of 7, like you said, you weren't heard. So I had to be loud in order. Can you imagine if 7 people are talking and my mom and my dad, my mom's pretty loud too. It's pretty hard to get your voice in. So you just instinctively your voice becomes louder, because you have to be heard. So that's the only way to kind of, you've got to intercept and say, hey, I'm here. Right. So that's how behaviors are formed. And that's how my voice is pretty loud as well. And I've learned techniques how to make it lower. But of course, when it comes to podcasts and things like that, it works to my benefit. So behaviors are formed with that as well. But like you said as well, that did help me also to learn to become assertive, because being the youngest and being told what to do by everybody, and having 6 brothers, mothers and fathers kind of thing on top of my parents, after a while, I guess it probably happened after my teens, going into my 20s. I got married very young, like 18 at my first marriage, which only lasted for a year. It was pretty much just a way to kind of get out and kind of go on my own, I realize now. Slowly going into that, I noticed I had to get into my own. And it was after my second marriage, actually, that kind of ended, which was the catalyst for me to just take hold and say, listen, what's happening in my life? Why are these things happening? What's the world about? What are we here for? What's my purpose? What's the purpose of the world? I had all these questions, and the catalyst was really my second marriage. That's when I realized I really had to get a backbone and go deep inside to recognize why I had certain behaviors, like you said, okay, the loud voice is a minor little thing, but the behaviors also to kind of always be passive and go along with what the other person is saying because I didn't like confrontation. And thinking that being assertive, perhaps, which is assertive just means really speaking your truth. It doesn't mean being aggressive. There's a clear difference between that. But I realized that being assertive really is just owning my truth. And I needed to do that in order for my relationships to get better, for definitely the outside, but also with myself in order to get that love and peace from the inside out that we're talking about. But it definitely, this is the realization that, with my experiences afterwards and my relationships is when I realized that my problem was I wasn't speaking my truth because and being in a large family, perhaps also you're always being told, and back, I'm brought up in a different generation than what I'm bringing my children up, where you were being told to talk only when you're spoken to. And my parents' view back then was also the guys speak, the women's job is to kind of take the back seat. So all that came into, augmented me not being assertive and speaking my truth and kind of holding things in. And of course, I recognized slowly as my relationships kind of didn't work out that I went back to the key fundament and I recognized it was assertiveness. You have to be assertive. You've got to be true to yourself. And you've got to own your truth. You've got to communicate it effectively. And of course, you've got to be aware of how to do that, right?
Yeah. So do you find, and you mentioned about women and the upbringing, and I grew up in a European household as well. We actually used to have a business, how I met Frank. We used to have a business that was in Greece. And so it's a very similar upbringing in certain values. And like you said, you don't speak until you're spoken to, all of that. But have you noticed with specifically women, right? There's a lot of times, and we still hear that right now, where women will say, I was told I'm too much. You're too much of this or too much of that, and so you need to kind of tone it down. So as we talk about assertiveness versus aggressiveness, I know that sometimes, even for myself, and like I use that example when I was a child, where it was kind of like it was assertiveness, but there was actually a bit of aggression to it because I was frustrated. It's like, so it's suppressed long enough that I finally was like, hey, this is starting to really get on my nerves. So how do you know the balance, or how does someone who is listening know the where they're at in terms of like when they're being assertive versus when they're crossing that line into being aggressive?
Yeah. And aggressive, I mean, some people just have the tendency of it being aggressive, but clearly, like you said before, if you're passive long enough, you will end up having some aggressive episodes. It's like a balloon, right? You stuff it, stuff it, stuff it. After a while, it will just go bam, it will explode. So that's what happens when you're too passive. So, and I'll give you an example. I'll share an example with you, one of my tools on how to know when you're not being assertive, but just to get an idea. Passive is when you're at the low, where basically you're holding everything in and you're not following your truth. You're compromising yourself for everybody else, just to please everybody else. A lot of those reasons could be the way you were brought up, because you don't want confrontations, or you feel you're not good enough, or perhaps you're not worthy, or you feel you're not enough, and you're putting up with a lot of that stuff. Now that's another episode on how to go back into deep down inside to see why you're doing certain things. But aggressive is on the other scope, where you're just and you'll recognize if you're being aggressive, because aggressive is being antagonistic. Being irony a lot of times is aggressive as well. And then so you'll notice it when you're being antagonistic, or you're doing it on purpose to kind of aggravate people, kind of. And irony is a sense of that as well. And of course, then you have the passive aggressive, which people are confused with. And the passive aggressive people, a lot of passive aggressive people think they are assertive, but it's a total different dynamic. And personally, I actually, Nicole, I also thought I was assertive when I was being passive aggressive. But passive aggressive, you'll notice your tendency is when you're hinting, because you have to be kind of direct in a loving way, is what assertive is. So if you're hinting or kind of using sarcasm or joking, that is passive aggressive. It's not assertive. Assertive, on the other hand, is kind of like Goldilocks, right? It just feels good. It feels good from the inside out. Your whole soul, it feels good because you're being true to yourself and you're honoring your higher self, your authentic self. And the difference is you're being assertive. You're telling the other person what you want. It's very simple. You tell them what you want, what you don't want, what you like, what you don't like, and what you feel. So you're not putting judgment on the other person. You're not putting blame on the other person. You're just stating facts. There's no drama. So you're not causing drama. Oh my God, this happened and you did this. No, your sentences don't start with you. They all start with I. And it's simply expressing how you feel, what you like, what you don't like, what you want, and what you don't want. It's as simple as that. And Nicole, if you actually watch young kids and animals, you'll notice, you'll see exactly what assertiveness is. Because you'll see little kids, they are hungry, they'll cry. Or, little toddlers or young children as well. They'll just tell you. They're not sitting there thinking, oh my God, what's Maria going to think right now? Or what's Nicole going to do if I'm hungry and if I tell her? No, they just say, Mom, I'm hungry. So all that thing where you get into your head too much, that's part of growing up, basically, with all your traumas, with all your upbringings, and with all the, I call it ego, with all the things that you're taught to think are correct. But if you allow yourself to go from within, from your authentic self, it's very simple. Just say what you want. And if you're not doing it intentionally to hurt someone, then your concern is not, Nicole, if I tell you, listen, I really don't want to come out for drinks tonight. If you get offended, I mean, that's not on me. I'm not going to sit there analyzing, oh my God, what did she think? What did I do? My intention was not to hurt you intentionally. So my conscience is clear. So basically, it's about that, saying how you feel, not intentionally trying to hurt anybody, and treat people the way you like to be treated. So keep that in mind. How would you like to be treated? And it's as simple as that. It's easy to learn. And the good thing is we're not born with it, but it is easy to learn. And the more you practice it over time, you can actually perfect it. And it becomes who you are. It becomes your personality. So, and it's doable because I've done it.
Well, I love this, and I know that when I was growing up, I started to adapt this sarcastic humor, this the little digs. You kind of you joke and so forth, and I realized that wasn't healthy, and I didn't feel good when I did it. It's kind of like a juicy morsel that you eat, and then it actually is bitter when it goes down in your stomach. And so that's where I just stopped, even though it was funny and people would enjoy that dry, witty sense of humor. I chose to just drop it because it didn't build didn't build me up, and it didn't build the other person up. And I just valued the relationship and that more. Now, let's talk about love versus fear. One of my favorite topics, actually, this idea that I remember one of my mentors, he said, you're either coming from a place of love or fear. They can't coexist in the same, at the same time. And I challenge that, is what I do. I challenge things because I don't want to just take it for, somebody tells me something, I'm going to think it through. Does that make sense? And so as I did, I was like, wow, yeah. I mean, you could have love and fear, and they could be like simultaneously one after the other. Let's say somebody jumps in, falls in the water and you're trying to save them. So you might have a fear for their life and concern, but you're actually going and taking action because of love. So, so there's that, but I'd love to talk about it in the context of this. It's like, how do you know if somebody's listening, and this is all about awareness. So we haven't used the word that often, awareness, but this is about being aware of how you're interacting with others, what's important to you. Mention about what is your voice, what is your truth, and so forth. This is all about awareness. So becoming aware of, am I coming from a place of love?
Yeah.
Or am I coming from a place of fear?
Yeah, and I'll give you a tool afterwards. You could forget how we could share a tool with the audience on how to know. But basically, a love, and we both have love and fear, and and there's two kinds of fears. There's real fear, and there's the illusion of fear. Is the way I describe it. The real fear is, clearly we need fear, and I mentioned in my book as well, and I say that fear is ego. I equate fear into ego. And the ego for me is your false self. It's the part that's born with your outside self, basically, is the way I define that. So to define it a little bit clearer so people understand. So the ego, or the false fear, is the part that you're born with once your veil leaves, basically. Because once you're born, you're just this beautiful love energy. That's truly who we are, is love energy. And our purpose, I believe, here is to realize that we are this beautiful divine energy, and we're having a physical experience. Now, the physical experience is what I call the ego, and that's the false illusion of the fear as well. And we'll talk more about the fear. So, like I said, we're born, we need the ego, which is part of the fear. We need it for survival, obviously. We need to know, and it was designed, back in the day when we were cavemen and hunting animals. So we need fear to know when we're in danger. So if Nicole, if you're chasing me with a knife to stab me, that's my flight or fight mode that comes up, the fear, to make me realize, oh my God, I'm in danger right now. I've got to run. So that's real fear. So it's important to recognize that we need the ego. We need that fear for survival and for in order to survive. And I'll give tool to differentiate. I'll give you tools afterwards to differentiate between the real fear and the fake fear. Now, the illusion of the fear is what I call the ego, and the ego is the false self that comes with our human body. And the illusion of the fear is when you're feeling yourself activated, but you don't really know if am I in danger or am I not in danger? So it could be just because you're anxious about something. It could be anxiety. It could just because you're out of your comfort zone, or it could be because you're not being assertive. Most of the time, it is because you're not being assertive, and because assertiveness is owning your truth. So it stems out from not being assertive. But to go more specific, it shows itself as anxiety, as a fear, as not being comfortable in a situation, or not speaking your truth. So that's the illusion of fear. And the way to distinguish the real fear with a fake fear it's a very simple tool that I use, and it's your sympathetic nervous system. If you're activated, clearly we know when the fight and flight mode comes up, which is fear, automatically we feel anxious, right? And we'll feel it in three key points. We'll either feel it in our head, where we're, and in that case, you're about to act aggressively. You feel, the blood rushing in your head, and you're about to scream and go crazy. That's one area you're going to feel it. Or, and this is, kind of also with awareness. So be aware. So stay tuned to and aware with yourself, with your body, to see when you're activated, when your fight and flight mode is activated. If you feel one of these three areas that I'm going to define to you, stop at that moment, because at that moment, you're not going to act assertively. You're not going to act lovingly. You're not going to act out of your authentic self. And the fear, and perhaps it's not real fear. It's just the illusion. So like I said, the first place is your head. You'll feel the blood rushing in your head. And you could see, when we had little kids and they were running around and fighting, where you're about to scream, "Ow!" That's when you're about to go crazy. That's the blood rushing in your head. In that case, you'll probably act aggressively. So that's one area. The second area would be your heart. So if you feel your heart pounding and you feel that, it shows us anxiety a lot of times, or just it's just pounding hard, or you get, at that moment, also, that's another area where your fight or flight mode would be activated. And the third part, which is very common as well, is your stomach area. And we know that the stomach area, that's the solar, that's your powerhouse, actually. That's the powerful, that's your powerful chakra. So you'll feel it in your stomach, and you'll feel it as butterflies maybe, or as your stomach like in knots and churning. So, and usually in that area, it's because you're giving your power away. And what I mean by that is you're not, and a lot of times when you're feeling that, you're going to act passive. You're not going to do what your authentic self wants you to do, or which is in tune to what you want to do. You're not being true to yourself. You're compromising your own beliefs and your own wants and your own self to please others. So when you feel you're in one of those three key points, what I tell my clients is just pause. Stop what you're doing at that moment. And those are the key activators for anybody to recognize that at that moment, you've got to pause and reflect. That's how you're going to get an awareness to recognize, now, is this true fear? So you're going to analyze it. So if you feel your heart pounding, basically, I want you to really pause, take a deep breath. 3 deep breaths usually brings you back into balance. So 3 deep breaths in through your nose, slow breaths out from your mouth, and we can practice breaths if you want afterwards. So 3 deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. And usually the reason why you do that is the 3 deep breaths will usually stop you from thinking, because your head is the mind trap. That's where the ego is at, really. That's where your assumptions and your everything happens. Your heart is where your authentic self lies. That's where your love energy is. So the three deep breaths will usually stop you from thinking and bring you back into pause. And in that moment, afterwards, I want you to reflect. So it's pause, breathe, reflect, reflect. And that's the awareness. That's where you get the full awareness of what's going on with you and what's going on in the environment you are. And then if it's your heart that's activated, literally ask your heart. Your heart is yourself. It's your authentic self. Ask that body part that's activated and say, heart, why are you activated at this moment? What's going on in this moment? Why are you activated? So, it's important to question, because the answers are always in the questions. That's where awareness lies. You have to ask the questions and not just believe everything that's told to you, or just even believe yourself, because like I said, your mind is a trap. It's a mind trap. So going to your authentic self and asking your authentic self the question is where your awareness comes in, where you'll get the real answer. So ask your heart, why are you activated right now? So go into the reflection and see. And I made a Greek word called mesasize. And the word mesa means inside, mesasize. And I came up from that, we know what exercise is. Everybody's big in exercising, and that means exo in Greek means outside. It's exercising your outside body. Now I made the Greek word called mesasize, which is internalize. So reflect within yourself, then go to your heart, and then you ask your heart, why are you activated? And your heart, your authentic self is going to tell you through your intuition, you're going to get the answer. So evaluate, are you in danger? Is somebody chasing you? Is there a wild bear chasing you? Or is there somebody behind you with a gun? Or are you in immediate danger? If so, it's okay, fight or flight. So run, or you need to fight. So your fight or flight mode then is activated normally, because you need it for survival. But you'll find that 99.9% of the time when you're activated, when you feel anxiety or stress, it's not because your fight or flight, that fear that you're feeling, is not real. It's an illusion. It's an illusion. And you'll find that most of the time, it's because at that moment, you're either in the past, or you're in the past, or you're in the future. And that's another clue. You're not in the present. So analyze, what is it right now? Why am I activated? Or it could be immediately when you're dealing with someone as well. So when you're immediately dealing with someone as well, when you're feeling yourself activated, use this technique, stop, and then you're going to analyze, why am I activated? So, my authentic self might say right now, Maria, you might not want to go for coffee with Nicole, but you're about to say yes, because you don't want to hurt her feelings. And you're feeling this thing in your stomach because you're like, oh, I really don't want to do this. So at that moment, your authentic self will tell you what it is. So at that moment, with the awareness of why you're activated, you can make the decision consciously, because of course that's in your subconscious, right? The fear, the ego is in your subconscious. So then consciously you can make the decision, okay, I'm going to go anyways, knowing that I don't really want to go, but I'm consciously make the decision. And by taking that power away from making that decision yourself, you'll notice that you're not going to be activated anymore. Or you may say, okay, I really don't want to go. And then you assertively use the assertive techniques and you say, Nicole, I really appreciate the offer, but I really don't feel like going today. Very simple. And then, so basically pause, breathe, reflect, and then act or react. Because if you act and react when you're feeling activated, you're not going to act assertively. You're either going to act passively, aggressively, or passive aggressively, and you're not going to honor yourself.
This is so good. This is so good. I love it because it applies to relationships, personal relationships. It also applies in business. And I think of entrepreneurs sometimes who feel like they need to agree to everything, or they can't say their truth. And you mentioned about the whole thing with coffee. It's interesting because I had a mentor coach who really was big on integrity and honoring your agreements and not making agreements that you're not willing to keep. And it's to your point is that I challenged myself in that moment and said, you know what? I'm not going to agree anymore to things that I really don't want to do. And so when people oftentimes will say that, you'll be in a networking event and somebody will say, "Oh, let's do lunch," and everything, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." And they really mean like that's never going to happen, right? But they just go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And every time you do that, you're actually out of integrity with yourself. And
Yes.
it takes, and I just noticed how that impacted my confidence. And so, and diminished my confidence and my self-esteem and my self-worth and all of that. And so once I started just saying, no, I'd rather not, or you know what, why don't we catch up on Zoom, or why don't we, we'll stay in touch by email instead, or whatever. And especially nowadays, and I'm just making this also relevant. So some of our listeners are entrepreneurs. I think of like LinkedIn. I get it on Facebook, but I also get it a lot on LinkedIn. Is that I'll get these requests to say, hey, let's connect because I just want to learn more about you and so forth. And some of that you can feel the energy that comes off it, that it is actually genuine. Other times it's, it's a sales pitch, and it's just another way to get you on the phone so they can pitch you. And I have been pitched that way. And so sometimes we don't want to say no because we don't want to offend people. We want to be nice, we want to be friendly and kind, and so forth, but deep down inside we know that that's not where we want to be. Or there's an event somebody invites you to, and you don't want to go, but you go anyway, or you agree to go, and then you're regretting the whole time you're there. And
Yeah.
so what
And
you're talking about is just so important in life and in personal relationships and owning your truth. It's also really important in business so that you can bring that power that you talked about. You can bring that confidence even to what you do, your career, your business, and whatever.
yeah, and Nicole, being assertive is just a word, but it's a way of being also. It's not just a word.
Yes.
It's not just a communication. Really a way of being. And the more you practice the tool that I gave you, first you might have to pause, breathe, reflect, and have to like, and if you have to, take yourself out of the situation. Maybe go to the bathroom if you're in, or leave, and get yourself out of the situation to do the exercise I gave you. But with time, you're going to notice I do it now instantly. I instantly, when I feel myself activated, I'll stop, pause, breathe, and instantly with awareness. So you'll get to that point eventually, but don't be hard, for the listeners, don't be hard on yourself at the beginning if you're feeling, oh my God, I keep losing it. No, at the beginning, take time out and just go to the bathroom, leave the situation, and fully practice it. Yeah, and that really helps. And so assertiveness also, of course, is a way of being. And it's so important, like you said, even in the business world, because not only does it give you confidence, assertiveness is giving you confidence. And when we talked about passive aggressiveness earlier, and the reason people use sarcasm and hinting and stuff like that and joking is because truly they're not confident enough to be assertive, to tell someone lovingly. And that's what assertiveness is. It's being loving to your, and taking your rights and the other person's rights into consideration. That's important to remember. That's the difference between assertiveness and everything else. And being assertive really is confidence. It will give you confidence within yourself to be able to communicate with everybody else in your relationships, whether they're personal or business, because you're honoring yourself and you have the right tools to be able to communicate it effectively, right? And it also, beyond all, it allows you to be authentic. And we know how important that is in business. I mean, someone, if you're not authentic, people will feel your energy. So it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter how cool you think you sound. It doesn't matter how intellectual you are. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have. If somebody is not authentic, most people that are aware, well, all people that are aware, will sense it. They will, and even people that are not aware will feel something off with you, and they'll say, I wonder why, I feel this disconnect with Maria, or I don't feel the authenticity. And that's because you're not being assertive. So people will feel it. Now, being assertive, it's not about being liked, right? Most likely people will like you because they'll respect you, but it doesn't mean they'll have to agree with everything that you're saying or that you're doing. And that's the other thing to remember. You could, people that are assertive and that are authentic within themselves, that are confident and authentic, could get along with anybody. It doesn't matter if your beliefs are different from mine, if you like to do different things than I do. Assertive people that are loving, that take their rights and your rights into consideration, can get along with anyone because they recognize that your truth might be different from mine, and that's okay. It's respect. It's also having respect for the other person, for yourself, and taking their rights in consideration. It's not being narcissistic. It's not being selfish. Assertiveness and self-care it's actually self-care. It's not selfish, and that's what people also have a problem with, especially women. They're like, oh, it's selfish to do this or not to invite that person or whatever. And I have to remind them, no, it's not selfish. It's self-care. If you really don't want to do it, or if it makes you feel off, or if you don't feel good about it, and it makes you anxiety. That's not selfish. That's actually self-care. As long as you're you're expressing it in a loving way. You're letting the other person know in a loving way what is going on, right? And we know very, going back to the technique that I taught you, I taught, that was speaking to the audience. Dis-ease. I mean, the word itself, dis-ease, is without ease, right? Dis-ease. So take the exercise that I gave you and put that into context. I mean, people get sick and they get stressed. They get all these illnesses within themselves when they're without ease. So if you're living your life without ease, dis-ease, constantly not even being aware that you're being off, then that's how people usually get sick. And you could tell me where the sickness is in certain person, and I will tell you which chakra is blocked, what it is in their tendency that they're doing, that they're allowing themselves to get sick, because they're closing off their chakras, they're closing off themselves, they're not being true to themselves, and this ease comes from not being at ease. So, and that's where stress comes in, and that's where everything breaks down within yourself as well. So if you don't do it because you want to be confident, if you don't do it because you want to be authentic, if you don't do it because you want to be, you want to have a good romantic relationship, or family relationship, or whether you want to be, a business person, do it for yourself, because you owe it to yourself, to be healthy and to live the life with ease and with love and peace from the inside out. So you're able to enjoy yourself and truly never be activated in that sense again, and not feel the anxiety and not feel that pressure. And there's ways to do that. So you just have to take the leap and say, okay, I'm gonna be authentic to myself. I'm gonna start to live in and with awareness from now on, and do that with reflection, asking the questions, and then learning some basic tools on how to communicate effectively and there's ways to do that where you feel more comfortable. And I could share with you one easy way. Actually, I'll share one technique with you also in assertiveness, one communication skill. And like you said earlier about going for coffee, whether you're a business person or with family, and we'll use the coffee example again. So if you don't really want to go for coffee with someone, I find it easy sometimes when you thank them. So I don't like to use "I am sorry," because there's nothing for you to be sorry for unless if you haven't done anything, right? And as Canadians, I mean, you're in the States, but as Canadians, we're always sorry for everything. And I cringe because it's like, what are you sorry for, right? So instead of saying "I'm sorry," just basically say, "Thank you very much for the invite, Nicole." So replace your sorry by "Thank you. Thank you for the invite, Nicole, but I really can't make it today. Perhaps another time," or or whatever you want to say at that point. And also you don't have to give tons of explanations and excuses. Just state the facts. So and I find by using I thank you, it makes it easier for some people to also use, to be authentic to themselves, because this way they're thanking the other person, they're giving appreciation to the other person for what they're offering and what they're doing as well.
I love it. There's so much here. You're a wealth of knowledge and in insight, Maria. Thank you. And I think that well, first of all, you've got your book, and I'm just going to do another plug for this. Connect with yourself and others. We've been listening to Maria share just a little bit of a taste of what's in this book. There are principles that she talks through. There are also factors for a successful transformation, 30 factors to a successful transformation. So, and 7 principles. So I would just encourage everyone, get a copy of her book. You can go on Amazon, and of course you can also, and I'll put this on the screen, you can also go to her website, mariafudas.com, and get a copy of this book. She also has some other excellent resources there. And, the thing is about relationships and connecting with yourself and others. There's no aspect of life that you can get away from this. Business, life, it's all about relationships you have with yourself, the relationship you have with others. And she's giving you some practical tools here. And I think this is one of those episodes that people are going to want to listen to again and again, Maria, because you just packed so much into a short period of time and what they can do, and just even being aware. I noticed in your book, you talk about forgiveness and where that ties in and all sorts of things. So yeah, I would encourage everyone, just go get a copy of her book. Maria, as we end, I know you have a poem that you wanted to share on awareness. You want to do that now?
Sure, let me do that. I'm putting my glasses on because my age is going to show now, but that's okay. Okay, so yeah, so it's at the end of my book, and it's a great way to close, Nicole. So thank you for that. So awareness, and it kind of the poem I put pretty much an explanation of what it all boils down to. So awareness, I am powerful beyond measure, and it gives me so much pleasure to know that I am a creator of my life, and I can have and be anything I want. What I give, I get back. So I choose to live in awareness, as I discovered that's the only way to live and be, as it allows me to consciously create and see my true essence and existence, and to appreciate and value everything and everyone around me. Love is who I am. I choose to consciously give love and be aware when I do not, and be aware when I allow fear to put me in despair. I choose peace and not drama, as peace allows me to live with ease and allows me to follow my dharma. I have no doubt that love and peace come from the inside out. I also know that it's my choice, so I consciously choose love and all of the above. Do you choose to live your life with ease? If so, consciously make the choice of love and peace. And that pretty
Beautiful.
much explains
Beautiful.
everything we were talking about.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Maria. I appreciate you. And again, for our listeners, go get a copy of Maria's book, Connect with Yourself and Others. You can go to mariafudas.com. I'm sure it's also on Amazon and everywhere else where you get books. And we just really appreciate you being here, Maria. We appreciate the listeners and viewers for being here. And we hope this has brought some light into this area of assertiveness, and especially women, but also men, really understanding the balance and being in assertiveness and not aggressiveness or passive aggressive, or finding yourself, having to be sarcastic. We talked about a lot today, so this again might be one of those episodes that you re-listen to get all the nuggets out of it. We'd love to hear your comments. So you can comment here. If you're watching live, you can comment in the chat below. You can also, of course, go to leadersoftransformation.com and you can reach out to us there. You can follow us on social, and the social handle is leadersoftransformation.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, and this is actually episode 391. So there are 390 episodes available for you if you are curious to learn how to be a better leader. I believe leadership starts with ourselves. It's how we lead ourselves, lead and live well. And then it is about leading others. So yes, and we've got a comment here from Kat, and she said, very informative. So awesome, Kat. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate you.
Thanks.
All right. So I highly encourage you, get a copy of her book, follow us, watch for the next episodes. Next week, we have another amazing guest that we're going to have on here next Tuesday. And we're going to talk about some topics around ethics and integrity and what that looks like. And we have a wonderful guest. So I encourage you to follow us and join us live there. Leaders of Transformation. Take action. Take action on something that you learned here. Maria just poured her heart out and her insight and all that life experience that she had. Take action on it. Become more aware, practice some of these techniques, because that's where transformation happens. It's awareness, and then it's making a choice and a decision of what you're going to do with that information. And then it takes action. It takes actually applying it in your life to make a difference. So I highly encourage you to do that. Again, thank you for being here, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Leaders of Transformation real soon.
Thank you, Nicole. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.